Welcome back to Klepper's Corner Today in History. March 25th is one of those dates where humanity collectively decided to try absolutely everything at once. Founding cities, launching revolutions, inventing the internet's comment section, overthrowing empires, and occasionally just accidentally inventing democracy because somebody forgot to wear armor that morning. If history teaches us anything, it's that progress often happens because someone, somewhere, makes a questionable decision, and everyone else spends the next 500 years dealing with the consequences. And today's lineup proves once again that civilization is basically a long-running improv show where nobody knows the rules, but everyone is extremely confident they do. Segment 1, resurrection, rebirth, and really dramatic spring holidays. Humanity has always loved a good comeback story, and March 25th delivers more plot twists than a soap opera written by theologians. The ancient Roman festival of Hilaria celebrated the resurrection of Attis, a god whose annual death and rebirth storyline helped people process the terrifying realization that winter eventually ends, but taxes never do. Romans celebrated by dressing in disguises and openly mocking authority, which historians now recognize as the earliest recorded instance of the internet. The thematic parallels between Attis's resurrection and later Christian traditions help smooth the transition from pagan rituals to Christianity, proving once again that religions, like streaming services, often keep the popular content while changing the branding. Meanwhile, centuries later, revolutionaries in Greece chose March 25th to launch their war for independence from the Ottoman Empire, cleverly tying national liberation to a major religious holiday. Because nothing motivates people like combining patriotism with divine scheduling. The lesson here is clear. If you want people to show up for your revolution, put it on a date already marked on the calendar. Segment 2. Cities built on water and empires built on wishful thinking. March 25th also marks the legendary founding of Venice in 421 CE, when refugees fleeing chaos decided the safest place to build a city would be the middle of a swamp. While most people see a mosquito-infested lagoon and think, absolutely not, early Venetians looked at waist-deep mud and thought, prime real estate. By driving millions of wooden stakes into the seabed, they created a maritime empire that dominated trade for centuries, essentially inventing the concept of waterfront property as both luxury and survival strategy. Venice became a financial powerhouse, connecting east and west, proving that sometimes the best defense strategy is simply making your enemies too confused to invade. Imagine Attila the Hun arriving at the edge of a lagoon and saying, you know what? Never mind. It turns out the secret to long-term geopolitical stability might just be inconvenient parking. Segment 3. When one arrow accidentally creates democracy. King Richard the Lionheart, one of the most feared warriors of the Crusades, survived countless battles only to be fatally wounded by a teenage defender with a crossbow during a relatively minor siege in 1199. History often hinges on massive armies and sweeping strategies, but sometimes it just comes down to one guy forgetting his armor on Casual Friday. Richard's death led to the disastrous reign of King John, whose leadership was so unpopular that English nobles forced him to sign the Magna Carta in 1215, laying the groundwork for constitutional governance. So if you ever feel like your small actions don't matter, remember that one poorly aimed medieval projectile helped create the legal framework for modern democracy. That's the ultimate butterfly effect. One arrow leads to centuries of parliamentary debates about zoning laws. Segment 4. Crowns, revolutions, and the power of symbolism. In 1306, Robert the Bruce was crowned King of Scots in a ceremony that had all the production value of a last-minute school play. The traditional royal crown had been confiscated by England, so Bruce was crowned with a hastily made circlet, while the Countess of Buchan risked execution just to legitimize the ceremony. This improvised coronation helped ignite the Scottish fight for independence, eventually leading to victory at Bannockburn. Symbolism has always been powerful, whether it's a crown, a flag, or a very dramatic speech delivered while standing in bad weather. Revolutions often depend less on resources and more on convincing enough people that the story you're telling about your nation makes sense. National identity, it turns out, is mostly narrative with better costumes. Segment 5. Science, exploration, and the discovery of entire new worlds. On March 25, 1655, Christian Huygens discovered Titan, Saturn's largest moon, expanding humanity's understanding of the solar system. At the time, Titan appeared as a tiny dot of light. Yet centuries later, scientists discovered it has lakes of liquid methane and a thick atmosphere, basically making it the universe's most confusing vacation destination. Huygens helped prove that our planet was not the center of everything, which was emotionally devastating news for humans who had just gotten comfortable believing the universe revolved around their local politics. Scientific discovery tends to humble us repeatedly, reminding us that even when we think we understand reality, there's probably a giant orange moon raining hydrocarbons somewhere waiting to ruin our confidence. Segment 6. Human rights, tragedy, and the cost of progress. March 25th also includes the passage of Britain's Abolition of the Slave Trade Act in 1807, a monumental victory achieved after decades of activism led by William Wilberforce. While the act did not immediately end slavery, it marked a crucial turning point in global human rights, demonstrating that persistent moral pressure can eventually reshape economic systems built on exploitation. Tragically, March 25th is also marked by the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in 1911, where 146 workers died due to locked doors and unsafe conditions, sparking major labor reforms that still protect workers today. History often advances through painful lessons, revealing how frequently progress is purchased at a cost humanity later wishes it had avoided paying. Segment 7. Cold Wars, New Nations, and the Fragility of Peace. In 1949, the Soviet Union deported tens of thousands of Baltic citizens to Siberia in Operation Priboi, attempting to crush resistance through forced displacement. These actions left generational scars, but also strengthened national identities that ultimately fueled independence movements decades later. In 1957, European nations signed the Treaty of Rome, laying the foundation for what would become the European Union, an attempt to ensure the continent's frequent wars would be replaced with frequent meetings instead. Meanwhile, in 1971, Operation Searchlight triggered the Bangladesh Liberation War, reshaping South Asia and demonstrating how brutally political power struggles can escalate. History repeatedly reminds us that peace is often less a permanent condition and more an ongoing negotiation with better branding. Segment 8. Oil, assassinations, and the birth of the internet brain. In 1975, King Faisal of Saudi Arabia was assassinated by his nephew, illustrating how geopolitical stability can hinge on deeply personal conflicts inside royal families that make modern reality television look subtle. And in 1995, Ward Cunningham launched quick-witted, introducing the radical concept that the general public could collectively create knowledge online. This experiment in collaborative information eventually gave us Wikipedia, proving that humanity is capable of producing both an incredibly detailed article on 14th century agricultural tools and a 3,000-word argument about whether a hot dog is a sandwich. The internet has democratized knowledge, misinformation, and arguments about movie rankings in equal measure, confirming that progress always comes with side effects. In conclusion, March 25th shows us that history is rarely neat or predictable. Empires rise from swamps, kings fall from small mistakes, revolutions borrow symbolism from religious holidays, and the internet becomes both the greatest library ever built and a place where strangers debate pineapple on pizza with the intensity of medieval theologians. If there's one lesson from today, it's that humanity consistently stumbles forward through chaos, occasionally learning something useful along the way. and almost always leaving behind a story strange enough that future generations assume we must have known what we were doing. And that assumption may be history's greatest joke of all.